All right, welcome to week four's intro for NCTA 2020 summer class, Beyond Stereotypes. This is an optional video, just like always. All right, so what this video is going to cover, kind of an introduction to Saints, the book you're going to be reading this week, as well as an overview, kind of a simple view of the Boxer Rebellion. It's a lot to cover in a few minutes, but I'm just going to give you the real basics. Definitely encourage you, feel free to look it up. It was a very bloody and violent Chinese Civil War. And then talking about the supplemental readings, giving you kind of a little preview of the two choices you have for that. All right, so starting off with Saints. So, graphic novel based off of years of research. So, Yang, who wrote this, uh, he spent just many, many years collecting all the information, looking at research, seeing what was out there, and then decided to make two books on the Boxer Rebellion, one called Boxers, one called Saints. Boxers is going to be from a soldier in the Boxers Rebellion's point of view. Saints is from one of the Christian Chinese people's point of view. So what's interesting is you're going to get both points of view. Now, one of these books is going to be based more on research. One of them is a little less and it's a little more creative. Saints is the little more creative one. So what we're going to see in this is there's a lot of cartoonish style, especially to make the more serious stuff more palatable. So the blood, the gore, things like that, the cartoonish style makes it a little easier to use in your classroom. I know that there's a good chance that many of you in here have read this book, maybe even already teach it. So it'll be interesting to see what you have to say in the discussions. Our main character in this book is called Four Girl. She doesn't even have a name. Young ladies at this time, daughters, weren't really as valued in China frequently as boys were, and she comes from a very poor family. She's very disenfranchised in Chinese society. She really is the bottom rung of society. The fact that she doesn't even have a name is a pretty obvious signal of that. Throughout the book, she's going to eventually come in contact with some people who don't treat her as horribly. Those would be the Christians. And so she's going to, at first, just play kind of the role of, okay, I'm willing to listen to what you have to say because you've got food, you've got things I want. And then eventually she does actually take on the religion and switch. Joan of Arc makes frequent appearances in here. So like I said, the author, Yang, does take some license with this book more. So you're going to see a lot of different minor characters who are worth attention. The color in this is worth paying attention to. So there's all sorts of stuff in here that you can really dissect if you want to take some time, or you could even use the book really just on the surface level. So yeah, a lot of great things there. All right, so the box, like I said, I'm going to just try and give you a real short kind of the 10-cent tour version of it here. So in the 1800s, China is repeatedly humiliated. China had a long history of being the dominant power in Asia. They really were Asia. I mean, they conquered all over the place. Their culture spread all over the place. Everyone copied, whether that was by choice or by force. They were, the power. And then 1800s comes along. You've got colonization happening. You've got the Opium Wars, a war with Japan where China just gets humiliated by that. You got unfair trade deals. Really, all these foreign people are coming in and just doing whatever they want, taking whatever they want. And so you've got, on the one hand, this idea of, we're great, we invented this, we did this first, we're the powers, we're the intellectuals, we're the cultured, we're the best. And then you've got, we're getting humiliated, we're getting insulted, we're being walked upon. And these two things, they're not really meshing. And so that's going to cause an even higher degree of cognitive dissonance, a higher degree of anger and frustration. And some people look at it as the government is just, it's their fault. There's all sorts of things going on here. But that's kind of the backdrop. That's the 1800s. It's happening just time and time again. Then in the 1900s, really 1900, you've got a group of people who are so disenfranchised with what's happening. They want to see China for the Chinese again. Now, there's this weird idea of Chinese because if you study China, you realize China's not one people. China's huge. There's lots of different people in there, lots of different cultures, lots of different history. So it would have been interesting to see how this played out had the Boxers been victorious, had to deal with certain ideas and concepts and what is China, who are Chinese, all of this. But basically, at this point, it's a group of people who seek to purge China of everything that's not Chinese. So they get together, they're training, uh, there's a belief that if they train hard enough, that they will be able to make their bodies impervious to bullets. And the training is where the name boxer comes from. So from 1900 to 1901, we've got these peasants, they're training, and then they're marching into Beijing. All along the way, anytime they come across foreigners or Chinese Christians, churches, foreign property, foreign items, whatever, they're just destroying and killing all along the way. Um, just, a big wrath of destruction and blood and gore. For the most part, it's mostly Chinese killing Chinese. Not in the rural areas, there were not a whole lot of Westerners. There were some missionaries. You'll see that in both these books. Once they get to Beijing, they're going to try and get into the foreign quarters. Sorry, the foreign district, but they're not able to get entry. So instead, they're going to lay siege to this foreign district. They do this for a few weeks because they've had so much success and because of everything that's been happening. The Empress Dowager agrees with them, jumps in with them, sides with them, declares war on basically all the foreign powers in Beijing. So she endorses the Boxer Rebellion. To save their people, to stop the rebellion, to protect their business interests, whatever the case may be. All the different groups more or less get together. So the Western powers, the Japanese, and they send in troops to stop the Boxer Rebellion. They march in, they stop the siege, and basically it ends in 1901. So it may not have been a very long civil war, but it was very, very bloody, very brutal, very much us versus them on both sides. A lot of the brutality actually also happens at the end once the war's over. I'll get to that in a second. By some estimates, several hundred foreigners and several thousand Chinese Christians were killed, plus the Boxers themselves get killed. So, I mean, we're talking a lot of people dead in a year. So when we're looking at the aftermath, 1901, the rebellion officially ended because China had to agree to certain terms, and then the rebellion is over. These terms are not favorable to China. As you would imagine, if you've looked at things like the Opium Wars, you know that China was not being dealt with very fairly. So we've got all the forts that were there to protect Beijing, they have to be destroyed. All of the Boxers and the Chinese government officials who were involved in the Boxer Rebellion, they need to be punished. What those punishments are is going to kind of vary on who they are. Peasants are not going to be punished the same as the Empress Dowager, but pretty harsh punishments all around for most of the people, up to and including death. Foreign troops now could be stationed in Beijing. This is a new thing. The idea was if this ever happens again, we want our troops to be able to protect our people. So different countries are now allowed to station their troops in Beijing. Really, what that means is Beijing is now occupied by foreign armies. On top of that, China is not allowed to import any arms for the next 2 years. Now, a lot of the Boxers and the rebellion, they were using bladed weapons. But this gives the Western powers an excuse to not allow guns and other things to be imported into China. China also has to pay over $330 million in reparations for all the destruction, the death, pain and anguish, all of that, which is rather excessive. But on the, I guess on the plus side, a lot of that money does get returned to China by the different countries. I've seen it listed on like history.com that the United States returned all of the money that they were given in reparations, with the little caveat that that money had to be used to build a university in Beijing. So much of it was returned. So the rebellion also will weaken the Chinese government even farther. So the rebellion shows that a lot of the people did not have particular faith in the government to take care of things. That's why these peasants rose up. Now the government is weakened even more from this. The Empress Dowager stuck her neck out. Now the government is in a bad way, and then we've got the peasants who see that the government really can't do anything. So just a decade later, we see the collapse of the dynasty and really dynastic cycle come to an end. Now we have in 1912 the Republic of China. So that was just a really quick, left out so many details. I've known multiple people to get masters just in the Boxer Rebellion, so there is a lot of information out there. Please feel free to research some more. If you have specific questions, you can always ask. All right. Now on to our supplemental readings. So in this case, you have actually choice of a podcast on a Japanese female samurai. This podcast, they're talking about, well, what would happen if we were to turn this into a movie? It's not going to be turned into movies, so don't get excited. I haven't heard anything. But it's about the Meiji Restoration and a female samurai who fights to try and keep her country the way it is. And then you also have what's could be argued a Mongolian princess. We've got a woman who is related to the great Khan, Genghis Khan, and Kublai Khan. And she is a very ferocious woman. There's a story, whether it's true or not, any man who could out wrestle her, who could defeat her in a wrestling competition, would be able to marry her and then get basically everything she has. But if he lost, he had to give her his horse, and she had, by the end, this massive stable of thousands of horses. So really interesting. Both ladies here, very interesting characters. You can read about them here. Take your pick. I look forward to reading your posts as well as what you have to say about these two ladies. Those of you who've read Saints before or taught Saints before, I'm really interested to see what you have used in your class, how you've approached this book, and if you see anything new, because as we know, the more we read stuff, the more we find things we didn't see before. All right. Have a good one.